Welcome to Getting Our Reward Heads Together, the podcast for HR and reward leaders navigating the challenging world of reward. We bring you insights from the Reward Heads team and key partners to help you develop practical strategies to deliver reward that enables you to recruit, retain, and motivate in a fair way. Reward Heads are a boutique reward consultancy working with organisations of all sizes and sectors on solutions bespoke to them. Now, on with the podcast. Hello and welcome to the latest in the Reward Heads series of podcasts where we explore the big issues in pay and performance and people strategy. My name is Victoria Milford. I'm the CEO at Reward Heads, and today we're diving into one of the most hotly debated and perennially thorny topics in reward, and that's bonus schemes. Do they work? How should they be designed? And what pitfalls should organisations avoid? I am joined by Claire Williams, our consulting director here at Reward Heads. Hello, Claire.
Hi, Victoria. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation as you know, bonus schemes are one of my favourite types of project to work on with our clients. And bonus schemes are one of those topics where nearly everyone has an opinion, but not always the experience to design something that's both motivating and commercially sound.
Yeah, I bet the two of us have seen an awful lot of bonus schemes written on the back of a fag packet, haven't we? Where people go, oh, it's really easy. This is all you have to do. Right, well, without wishing to sound like Maria in The Sound of Music, shall we start at the very beginning? So if an organisation is thinking about either creating a bonus scheme or reviewing its existing bonus scheme, where should they start? What's the first thing that they should be considering?
Okay, well, the first question has to be, what are we trying to achieve? A bonus scheme isn't a bolt-on or a nice to have. It should directly support the business strategy. So that might mean driving growth in a new market, protecting margin, improving customer service or encouraging collaboration. You've got to ask, what are we trying to drive? So, for example, if your business strategy is about protecting margin in a tough market, then having a bonus based purely on revenue makes absolutely no sense. That's like rewarding someone for sprinting when the race is actually a marathon. If you don't anchor the scheme to strategy, you end up with something that feels rather arbitrary and employees will see straight through it.
Right, so it's about making the scheme almost an extension of the business plan and not something that just looks like a finance exercise.
Exactly, and being clear on the behaviours you want to drive, and then that clarity then flows through into every other design decision that you go on to make.
Yeah, so also it's not about saying, well, we've always had this scheme and it seems fine, or our main competitor does it this way, so we should do it that way too. It's about really aligning with that business, that organisation.
Yeah. Just that. And bonus schemes are a bit like sat navs. They only work if you know the destination that you're aiming for.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about measures, because that's always a tricky one, and you sort of alluded to it a bit already. Should companies be looking at revenue, profit, behaviours, individual targets, all of the above? What do you think?
Well, it depends on the business and its maturity. Revenue is simple. It's easy to understand, but it could encourage chasing sales at any cost. Profit, you see that a lot in bonus schemes. It's more sustainable, but harder for many individuals to influence, and employees may feel less connected to it. Behaviours, things like teamwork, collaboration, innovation or leadership, well, they're increasingly important, but quite hard to measure fairly. And then there's the personal outputs, which can give people a sense of control, but can risk silo thinking and perhaps everyone rowing in different directions. Imagine being on a rowing team where one person's aiming for Oxford and another for Cambridge. Well, you're not getting anywhere fast, frankly. And sometimes, and this is my personal bugbear, if I'm honest, personal objectives that can be tick box exercises to complete key tasks, regardless of whether they're actually just about doing your job, or even if they actually continue to be the right thing for the business. So launch X product by Y date in a leader's objectives would be far better replaced with something encouraging critical thinking and making healthy business decisions. So, say, being prepared to delay or stop a project if there's a really sound reason to do so.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think my bugbear also is what are we actually trying to bonus here? And it's often not very clear. So it sounds like there's no absolute perfect answer. There's no textbook one that we can just fill in.
If only, eh? That's right. The art is in balancing them and weighting their impact within the scheme based on what the business really needs to drive. And also being honest about what's necessary and what elements may be included simply because that's what we've always done historically. See a lot of that. Not being afraid to step away from the past or traditional measures that no longer serve a purpose for that particular organisation. So too many measures and the scheme can become quite confusing. So it's about thinking, are any of them a little bit redundant nowadays? But equally too few and it can feel too narrow and possibly unfair.
Okay, so let's say we've agreed the measures, we've got there. How would you then sort of structure the scheme? What about, weightings or things like thresholds or gateways?
Well, weightings are about signalling what matters most. So if profit protection is key, maybe that could be, 50% of the scheme, with revenue and behaviours making up the rest. Thresholds, gateways, etc. are essential in many schemes. For example, you might say no one gets paid out unless the company hits a minimum profit level of whatever. Multipliers can be really useful too. So rewarding exceptional performance to really motivate stretch achievement. Or like one of our recent clients where although different business areas have their own targets and objectives as part of the main scheme build, the multiplier within the design is based on the overall combined result of the whole group in order to foster a one business, one team approach, and foster more collaboration and sharing, as that's a really key part of their business strategy going forward. They're looking for those wow, we smashed it moments with the emphasis on the we, really heavily on the we.
So structure isn't just about the maths, it's communication, isn't it? It's sending a message about what the organisation truly values. And actually, you've reminded me of something that I guess I've said for quite a few years about what's reward all about. If your CEO was able to speak to every colleague every day and tell them what was most important, and bonus schemes kind of do that, don't they?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Employees read between the lines. If you weight something heavily, they know it's a priority and what their organisation values. You're essentially shouting, this matters.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to something that always garners a bit of debate, a bit controversial. Are PDRs, performance development reviews, are they still relevant to bonus schemes, or have they had their day? Are they on their way out?
Great question. Traditional PDRs are often seen as a bit clunky and backward looking. Many organisations are now moving towards continuous feedback models. I mean, let's face it, nobody wants to dredge through a 20-page form about what went well in Q2. People want feedback that's in real time and linked to what they're actually working on. Some organisations that we're speaking to, and I know you've spoken to a few as well, are even decoupling bonus payouts from personal performance results completely, given that they aren't confident in the historical arrangements and are also quite conscious that calibration and smoothing of score bell curves. It's that time of year that reward teams and HR teams sort of swear and curse about. Those can often mean that leaders only have room for a certain number of high performers to be recorded and paid out at a greater level. And, in a team full of truly high performers, that's an opportunity to pee a number of great people off just waiting to happen. But, if you are going to link performance to reward, then you still need a mechanism to assess personal contribution fairly. Whether you call it a PDR, a quarterly check-in, or something else, there has to be a robust and meaningful framework in order to link individual performance to reward.
Yeah, actually, it's reminding me of a client that I had recently where the senior team wanted to put on the table, should we get rid of PDRs? And it caused a lot of debate and a lot of talking around it. But what was really interesting was when they made the decision to move away, that a number of the team almost looked like a weight had been lifted, that there are so many issues, but people just feel they have to get on with it. But maybe it isn't always about abolishing PDRs. Maybe it's more about sort of modernising them.
Yeah, exactly. And, they need to be perhaps lighter touch, more frequent and timely, and more focused on impact rather than box ticking. And if a business can't be confident in their performance review framework, then they do have to ask themselves if it's fair and motivating to base reward calculations on it. Now, don't get me wrong. We have some clients who have absolutely worked really hard on this and now operate, all that in a much better way, along with others that are still on that journey. But generally, those tend to be very forward-thinking organisations who've been quite unafraid to stand back and take an honest, objective look at what's really happening, and also be bold enough to make significant change.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, not every organisation will have PDRs, so let's put that one to the side for now and just talk about the money. How do you make sure that a bonus scheme is actually affordable and appropriate for the business?
Well, financial modelling is crucial. And I always say, if your bonus scheme only works in a sunshine scenario, you've got a problem. It's about testing the scheme under different scenarios. So what happens if the business overperforms, underperforms, or land somewhere in the middle? You need to ensure you're not committing to payouts that could destabilise the company, but also that the scheme is generous enough to motivate people. We always recommend analysing who might be the winners and losers when changing from an existing scheme to something new, and looking at whether those results, the changing results, are they right and fitting. It's usually not about reducing the size of the pie, but slicing it differently and avoiding, say, paying champagne bonuses for sparkling water results, especially if they don't support the business strategy. It's a real balancing act.
You've reminded me of another one of my bugbears, and that's the expression, it washes its face. Well, we're not here to just
Yes.
do that.
I'm guilty of using that sometimes. So, eek.
But if we're in effect paying out everything that we're making, what on earth was the point of the scheme in the first place? So yeah, that's another one that gets my goat. So I think what you're describing then is sort of stress testing the scheme before rolling it out. Otherwise, you risk making promises that you just can't afford to keep.
Precisely, and nothing kills trust faster than a bonus scheme that suddenly has that unexpected small print. You wouldn't launch a new product without market testing. It's the same with a bonus scheme.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've designed a scheme, looks brilliant on paper. We've done all that scenario testing, but it can still fail, can't it, if people don't buy into it? So how can companies ensure that leaders and employees really are on board with it?
Yeah, for leadership, you need to show how the scheme supports the strategy and protects affordability. For participants, it's about clarity and communication. People need to know what they're being measured on, how they can influence outcomes and when they'll see the benefit. Transparency is absolutely key. And if people don't understand the scheme, they just simply won't trust it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing ever more emphasis on transparency across the board, really. So you're saying the design plus the communication gives credibility?
Yeah, spot on.
Anything else companies should be thinking about when it comes to bonus schemes?
There's probably two other things that are quite important. First, simplicity. If you can't explain the scheme in 5 minutes over a coffee, it's probably too complex. A well-designed scheme explained badly is often worse than having a mediocre scheme that's been explained brilliantly. And the second thing is to review regularly. Business priorities shift, and your scheme or schemes need to evolve with them.
Yeah, I think you're pushing more of my buttons there, Claire. I mean, the simplicity one for sure. I always say if you can't write it on one page and exactly as you said, describe it in 5 minutes over a coffee to someone who's no idea what you're talking about, then it's going to fail. It's too complicated. If you need a 10-page slide deck just to explain the rules, that's not to say you don't have background rules about eligibility and so on, but this is about how the scheme's working, isn't it?
Exactly. And you can have one or two lines that really get to the nub of what the scheme is about, almost like an elevator pitch for the bonus scheme that just hits the mark in terms of what it is and why.
And absolutely, schemes don't last forever. Back in the day, back when we were young, there were 5 and 10 year business plans. Now, if you had a 2-year business plan, that would be probably quite surprising. So if the business priorities change, then of course the bonus needs to change with it.
So yeah, it's not set and forget. So a bonus scheme is a living part of the business.
As you said at the start, Claire, one of our favourite topics, fascinating deep dive. I think there's so much to think about in the whole area of bonuses. So we talked a bit about strategy, about measures, structure, PDRs, modelling, buy-in. There's obviously an awful lot more to designing a bonus scheme than just the numbers, to make sure you get sort of alignment, motivation, trust. Absolutely. So if your organisation is thinking about reviewing or designing a bonus scheme, then Reward Heads can help. As I think you've probably picked up from our conversation, it's not about a textbook. It's not about a fixed structure. It's about us really building our real world practical expertise, not just theory, and designing a scheme that's really specific to you, that's motivating, affordable, strategically aligned, and really works for the business and for your people. So you can get in touch with us, either Claire and I directly or through our general email address, which is rewardsolutions@rewardheads.co.uk. Claire, thank you so much for sharing your insights today.
Thanks, Victoria. It's been good talking about a topic I'm really passionate about. Thank
you.